man.
We currently work with Cameco out of the Sask office. Oh, should use this. But we've both had about the same 16, 17 years of experience in environmental science careers. And so they sort of changed over time. So we're going to talk through that and then also talk a bit about nuclear power and uranium in Saskatchewan. So we'll start with that. But we want it to be fairly interactive. Then we'll do some experiments, watch a video. So we're here to hopefully get some feedback from you and be interactive on it. So now this is one thing that Cameco does is that we have to have a safety moment before any meeting that we have, any meeting. I mean, like you go and sit with somebody in an office and you have a chit chat and you got to talk about a safety moment. So just to bring your mind around thinking about, you know, staying safe throughout the day in your job, even in your personal life and things at home. So our safety moment today is staying active. So I want everyone to stand up.
After lunch, everybody gets nappies. Do a nice big stretch up. And lean to the side.
Yeah, you're old, your back cracks.
Yeah, so back up.
I can't do this.
And the other side.
No.
Just put your arms here.
Back up. Give a good stretch.
You just got to be like.
So, you know, that's even, so the stretching piece, if you're sitting down or you're watching TV or you're sitting working, doing your homework or at school, it's good to just stand up and do a little stretch throughout the day to give your brain and your eyes and your body a bit of a break. So we're just gonna switch back and forth and chat. So
yeah. Yes, as she said, stop us at any time if you have any questions, want to just chat about something that we're talking about in more detail, anything like that. So as Jenna mentioned, we've got quite a few years between us in the environmental field, and so both of us started out as environmental consultants, so we got to do quite a bit of different activities throughout our careers. So right now, I'm a senior environmental scientist with Cameco in Saskatoon. So what I do now is I deal a lot with the environmental programs that we run at our sites. So we sample the water, we sample the air, the fish, the lichen, everything like that. So we bring people to site to do that sampling, or our people do the sampling themselves. But in my past life, I've done a variety of things, and so I still get out every once in a while, so I might sit in an office in Saskatoon now, but whenever I get the chance, I go out and do some work. So we needed to do some environmental sampling up at our Cigar Lake operation, and so we collected the sediment from the bottom of the lake, and so we have the Zodiac. So the winter time sometimes comes a little earlier than you anticipate. But yeah, when I was working up at Key Lake, I was on the mine rescue team. So I got to do the firefighting on site, the medical, high-angle rope rescue, a little bit of everything, and that was a little side gig of my job. So if anybody got hurt at the site or we had a fire or anything like that, our team would respond and help them out, because you're up alone. The sites are pretty secluded up north, so you have to be prepared to handle anything yourselves. This is underground at MacArthur River, so Cameco is a uranium mining and milling company, so we have underground facilities as well as up on the surface. So doing some fishing, so that's an electro fishing boat that puts an electrical current in the water and it stuns the fish, and then you can scoop them out. It doesn't hurt them if you do it right, they'll just get a little stunned. But in my career, I also get to do a lot of meetings, talk with a lot of politicians, and do a lot of networking. So very varied in what I used to do and what I do now, but it's always very exciting. Well, okay, maybe not all the time.
Okay, thanks. So I am, actually Anna and I are both originally from Prince Albert. Have you guys ever been to Prince Albert. Yeah. And then I went to high school there, and then I didn't know for sure what I wanted to be when I grew up, but I knew that I liked wildlife, and I was interested in recycling, and I kind of had an interest in environmental work. And then my aunt actually lived in Edmonton, and she worked for Alberta Environment. And so she said, there's a program in Edmonton you might be interested in. So I moved from Prince Albert to Edmonton, and went to U of A and took environmental science there. Do you guys know what you want to do after you graduate? No? Anybody? You know?
Yeah.
What do you want to do?
I want to work with animals.
Do you?
Kids.
Okay, or kids?
Yeah.
Kind of dealing with the same thing.
Something.
I can see that now because I have 2 young boys, and I have 2 dogs, so I feel like they're similar. But I kind of was the same as you. Like I knew I wanted to work maybe with animals. I knew I wanted to, but I really didn't have an idea. Like grade 12, someone was like, "What do you want to be?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like so I think for me, as I ended up going into university and taking some general sciences. And then I started finding some programs that interested me. And actually, after I graduated, someone said, "What are you going to do now?" And I was like, "I don't know. I have an environmental science degree. I don't know what kind of job can I get." And I think at the time it was like, you want to be an environmental scientist, well, have fun. Like you won't get paid much to do that because no one cares about it at that time. It was long enough ago. And it turns out that actually almost every industry out there that's needs to have environmental impacts assessed before they go ahead. So the careers sort of escalated and the opportunities sort of escalated at that point. And I got to do a few different things. But before I started working for Cameco, I did work a lot outside and in the field. And the picture up here, this is, my dog since passed away, and I've got 2 new dogs, but this dog used to come with me almost everywhere I went in the field. So you're maybe working a little bit more on your own, but you get to be out on a quad, you get to do some fishing. And my dog came with me and stayed in different hotels with me, and I quite enjoyed it. And then I started working with Cameco, and again, there's a picture of the underground, pictures of sampling water. And since in the last 2 years, I actually shifted from doing environmental science work, and I now work in our community relations group. So that's actually I actually come into your communities and up into the Athabasca communities and talk with the people there about our uranium mining and the projects we have going on. So it shifted from doing field work to doing community relations work. So it's been a bit of a transition there. What kind of classes do you guys like? What's your favorite? You like math, you like science, you like reading? No?
English?
You like English? You like science too?
No.
Like reading, English? Anybody, what do you 2 girls like? Science?
Art and English.
Art and English? Cool. That's awesome. How about you guys? Art? You don't know yet? Oh, and 2 at the back. I see you. What do you guys like? English? English too? No, or do you not like school? I was a person that was like, I am done with school. Like, I don't like school. I'm done. And there's some people who are like, I want to go to school for the rest of my life, but
I still take classes. I take classes just for fun. Yeah.
Does anybody know what Cameco is? You heard of Cameco? You guys probably, well, Lash probably has, but you have lots of people that work there. You heard of Cameco? You guys in the ranch heard of Cameco before? No? Do you know what Cameco does? You know we're in Saskatchewan. You know we do mining. Have you heard of that before? Well, then I will tell you. Cameco mines uranium. And if you ask why we mine uranium, it's because it's actually used to generate electricity. So that's the purpose of it. But it is in the earth, underneath the ground is where you find uranium. So we actually have to go in underground and take the uranium out. So we have a few mines in Saskatchewan. Now here we are somewhere up here, orange, right here.
Yeah.
And then if you look, so we kind of feel like we're far north, we're in the orange, but then when you look where our mines are, you have to travel up here here's a mine, Rabbit Lake, Cigar Lake, MacArthur River, and Key Lake are the mines that we have. So they're quite far north, and this area that's all yellow here, it's known for some of the most highest uranium deposits in the world. So that's why it's become quite a big resource for Saskatchewan.
For sure. So who has something with them today that they plug in? Pretty much always, yeah. And that needs to come from somewhere, right? We need power to fuel our smartphones, our televisions, our computers, everything like that. And the modern world needs electricity. And where do we come into it? Well, uranium is used in nuclear power, which is a low carbon energy source. So we mine it because it's used to produce electricity, and we use electricity to fuel just about everything in our lives. So with nuclear power, can anybody tell me what's a problem with burning coal or burning gas in your engine or anything like that? Yeah? Do you like, going behind a vehicle and, yeah.
Greenhouse gases?
Greenhouse gases, definitely, yeah. And you look to some of the countries around the world, areas that have large populations, not so much up here in L'Orange, but it's a worldwide issue. And places that use a lot of electricity and have a lot of vehicles, have a lot of factories, and if they're using those fossil fuels to generate electricity, one of the side effects is the smog and the pollution that comes along with it. So every country is going to continue to use energy. That's not going to change anytime soon. I don't think any of us want to give up all of our electronics and our skidoos and our quads and everything like that. But if our electricity comes from a low carbon energy source that's maybe not as polluting as burning coal or burning wood or burning natural gas or oil, then we can reduce those greenhouse gas emissions. And that's really where some of the clean power alternatives come in. So when I say clean power, what do you guys think of? What does everybody think of? What do you see? Renewable power, anything like that?
Solar panels.
For sure. Solar panels,
Wind.
windmills, yeah, mills, windmills,
Wind
Yeah.
turbines.
turbines, yeah,
Windmills like in Holland.
yeah.
And
Yes, windmills in Holland, turbines, yes. And so I've been to China. China actually has to issue smog or pollution days where it's a health risk to go outside and breathe the air. So if you have any breathing difficulties, asthma, or maybe you're a little bit older, they actually recommend you stay inside at some days, or you might see people walking around with masks here. And so we need to transition to those low carbon energy sources. And as you said, there's lots of options out there. We have the solar panels, we have the wind turbines, but we also have nuclear power. And so all of these power sources utilized together really can form a good energy mix. So nice and reliable. The wind's not always blowing, the sun's not always shining. Yeah?
isn't nuclear power like also bad? Nuclear waste?
So we've got some slides on that to talk about later on. Can I hold that one and then come back to it, or do you want to jump ahead to that one? Jump ahead? Yeah. So, yeah, that is one of the things. When people think about nuclear power, they think about the waste, right? And so, Cameco works on the mining side of things. What we mine out of the ground is uranium, and that's used as fuel in nuclear reactors. And so you might have heard about the nuclear waste. We're seeing the Simpsons episode, the green goo, the three-eyed fish, everything like that. And that's really unfortunate because it is a fairly clean electricity source. So what do you guys think is coming out of those stacks there?
What does it look like? When I was young, I used to think those made clouds.
That's a beautiful cloud factory there. Yes. So yeah, we'll come back to some of this, but yeah, in Canada here right now we have about 17% of our electricity produced by nuclear power. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit just to answer your question, and then I'll come back. So the clean energy, nuclear power, everybody says, what about the waste? So for each one of us, if our entire lifetime produced nuclear waste, all the leftover fuel from nuclear in your entire lifetime would fit into a soda can.
So like all the power that you use for your house, for anything that you put in electricity,
Yeah.
the waste isn't, you're not going to deny that the waste is not, like, a small can is waste, it's not good waste. You can't throw it into the river, it's not, but it's very, very small amount for the amount of power that it produces. And all the waste from nuclear power is managed very closely into waste storage areas that are contained. Now, I know you're looking at me funny because you don't believe it.
I watched a John Oliver episode where they put a bunch of nuclear waste right beside one of the Great Lakes, and it's like very badly stored, and that they're very worried about it, and people are trying to protest that.
Oh, I believe that it's very safely contained, is how, because it's the most regulated industry in the world. And the requirements around the environmental protection of nuclear waste and nuclear power is extreme. Now, an interesting fact, if you look at the waste produced from solar panels, if you were to use solar panels for your entire life, the heavy metals and contaminants in solar power are produced more and are worse for the environment and less regulated than nuclear. So they can actually take those components of the solar panel and toss them almost into a landfill where they can go into the water. So that's why nuclear power has been criticized. It's had a bad history, but if you look at the overall life cycle of uranium, from uranium mining to the end result of the waste, it's actually the least impactful all the energy sources out there. It's fine. No, and I'm not doing this because you need to believe me right now.
Yeah.
You don't have to. I'm putting the thought in your head, and if you want to do more research on it,
we supply the information, but we fully encourage everyone to do the research, find out for yourself, and make your own decisions on everything that's presented to you.
And I love that you're questioning. You don't stop questioning because that's how you find out more information and you learn about it. And we've been in the industry, so we've had a lot of exposure to it and stuff, but you need to question and find it out yourself, and that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a little bit of everything on the mining side. So I work in compliance and licensing. That's the department I work in right now. And I deal a lot with the regulatory side of things. So every time we want to change something, every time we want to cut down some trees, anything like that, we go through an interesting process, quite detailed process with our regulators to ensure that we're doing it so that it protects the environment. Everybody knows what's happening. We discuss it with anybody who might potentially be impacted, local communities, local hunters, trappers. So yeah, a lot of regulations pretty much from the exploration side of the process all the way through to disposing of the spent fuel or nuclear waste. And so there's some people who don't even call it nuclear waste, they call it spent fuel because it does still have that energy life still left in it. So we don't have the technology to process it yet, but potentially in the future there might be those technologies out there. Yeah.
You said that all of that nuclear stuff could go into like a lifetime if we can. That's a lot of lives. A lot of people are on this planet.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're right.
Yep. Nope, for
And
sure.
you know, like, that, again, very good question. And now if we could live our lives without using any power, that would be the best, because there wouldn't be any waste, there wouldn't be any reason to produce it, right? But we have to have power. That's the area we live. We live now where you need power. So what we're saying is that it produces the least amount of waste out of any electrical source.
So
Like
when
if you went all solar, your waste would be higher. If you went all wind, your waste from that would be higher. The metals used in the turbines, and again, what I'm showing here is that personally, is that I believe in a mix of different energy sources. I do
What about
believe
water dams?
water dams.
Yeah.
So and in the mix as well. That's a great option. I used to actually work up in northern BC where we had a water dam. The problem is it floods a lot of area. It replaces a lot of tree area. It actually produces, when those trees degrade, it produces a lot of mercury, so that water actually becomes contaminated too, because the mercury level in the trees, when trees release the mercury from inside, it actually contaminates the water. So nothing's without an impact, is what I'm saying. But everything has a place.
So any power source needs mining, pretty much is the way it works right now, right? We need to pull coal out of the ground, burn coal to build solar panels, and the windmills, we need to mine those metals, we need to heat them, everything like that. So very labor intensive, very mining intensive, very resource intensive. And nuclear power kind of cuts that out because we can take it out of the ground and it forms its energy source right there. But there is a lot of controversy around nuclear power. We're not going to deny that whatsoever. It's more we're here to answer some questions and encourage you to find some more information, and we're happy to answer any of those questions anytime. And so for those of us working in the industry, I think Jan is with me, I truly believe it's a safe and reliable part of our energy mix. It is one of our low carbon energy sources, so similar to solar panels and windmills. And right now about 17% of the electricity in Canada is produced by nuclear power. So that's mostly in Ontario and the Maritime provinces. So while we mine a lot of uranium here in Saskatchewan, the world's richest, we don't have any nuclear power plants in our province as of yet. So the way nuclear power works, because I think that's one of the things that when I was younger, I always wanted to go into the environmental field, much like Jana. I would watch TV and I would see a nuclear power plant and I would be scared about what was coming out of those big towers and everything like that. I always thought that nuclear power was some crazy explosion process going on in there, and it's really, it's a reaction. So it's no explosions, it's not burning anything, it's the power contained within the uranium and how it's processed creates its own energy. It basically shoots little other, components and it bounces off and it creates a reaction. So it's fission, not combustion. But the way nuclear power works is it heats water. So same thing as a coal power plant, same thing as a natural gas power plant, anything like that. They all use heat to produce steam, which turns a turbine, which is a windmill, and that creates electricity. And so the big towers you see aren't unique to just nuclear power. These are also used at coal power generating plants, things like that. They're cooling towers. So you need a lot of water to keep things cool in the process of combustion. Anything that's burning or creating a reaction, you need cooling water, and so that's just steam. It's basically water vapor coming out of those cooling towers when you see them.
So that's how the hydropower works too, right? You got water rushing through the dam, turns turbines inside like that, and it produces electricity. Same as the wind turbine. The wind turbine, it's all these things that spin around and to produce energy from it. So they all kind of do these similar things using different sources. Yeah, so you like science, obviously, because you like this stuff and questioning this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Not just English.
Did you want to do McArthur River?
No.
Okay. So in terms of Cameco and some of the things that Jenna and I work at, the picture here is our MacArthur River operation. So it's a uranium mine in northern Saskatchewan. It's got some of the world's highest uranium ore in terms of the grade. So the picture you see here, you can see the head frame, the shaft in the distance. So essentially this part here goes down into the ground. We've got some air vents and everything because, of course, when people are underground, you want to make sure they have fresh air at all the time. And so this mine produces enough energy or enough uranium every year to produce electricity for millions of people around the world. And you'd think that that should take up a lot of space, but at MacArthur River, the ore body is about the size of a football field. So think of it next time you're watching it on TV or cheering the Riders on, anything like that, is, you know, the energy for millions of people comes from a space that fits on a football field, and we're only using parts of that to get that amount of electricity. And so I know I was always curious about what a mine looks like underground, and I've been fortunate. I've gotten underground and got to see it. But because uranium in the Athabasca Basin, that yellow part on the map that Jana showed you, is such a high concentration, it's really economical to pull out of the ground here in Saskatchewan because it does take up such a small area. So if you've ever wondered what a uranium mine looks like underground, here's MacArthur River. So because the uranium is such a high grade, it's so rich at this mine, they had to design safety into the process. So they had to make sure anybody working in the mine was protected, had fresh air, keeps them away from any radiation sources, things like that. So you'll see we have a variety of shafts going down. These little orange pieces here are the ore body. And all of these tunnels that looks kind of like an ant farm are all the tunnels that people use to get to the various pockets of ore. And part of the process here is because the ore is so rich, we want to keep people far away from it. So a lot of the people working underground here are operators, but they get to play like a gigantic video game. They get to sit, and part of their job is to drive scoop trams and various pieces of equipment while watching TV screens and using a gigantic remote control. And that means the equipment is near the ore, but not the people.
Do you guys know anybody that works at Cameco? Anybody that your family or friends in your communities? No?
Everyone's a generator.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Anybody else? Usually there's some people who have relatives that work there, but.
I spent 6 summers over there.
Did you? Yeah.
Oh, what did you do?
I was a tour coordinator.
Oh, what years were you there?
Oh, 2010 to 2015.
I left in 2010. We were just Mr. MacArthur River.
So you've seen the gigantic remote controls in this firsthand, yeah. So a lot of the things at some of the other mines that would be on the surface are underground at MacArthur. So they actually grind up the ore here, they make it into a slurry, so they essentially add water to make it kind of a liquidy paste so that it can be pumped to the surface. And then the ore from MacArthur River is trucked about 80 kilometers down the highway to our Key Lake operation, which mills it. And they produce calcine, which then goes to the power side of things. So the calcine can be made into the pellets for nuclear facilities. So if you've ever wondered how deep some of these sites go, some of the older sites, so Key Lake used to be a mine, it was an open pit, so very close to the surface here. They could actually just remove the ground above it and get to it. But some of these other sites, we're talking MacArthur River, so that one's about 640 meters underground. So think of like the CN Tower, how tall the tallest buildings are. It's a long way underground. And some of the newer deposits are even a bit lower. So do you guys know Orano? You might know them as Areva. They have the McLean Lake operation. So when they were mining, that's where they are. Now, our Cigar Lake, which goes to McLean Lake now, it's not quite as deep as MacArthur, but it's getting close there. So a lot of these deposits were found in the 1970s, and like I said, most of them were shallow. And then as time goes on, we've been able to go deeper and deeper as technology advances. So as I said, the ore from the MacArthur River operation gets trucked down to Key Lake. So Key Lake used to be a mine, it's a uranium mill now. So they take the ore and they process it into yellow cake. So the yellow cake that Key Lake produces is actually black. Of course, right? Why wouldn't yellow cake be black? But that's because at Key Lake, they burn the yellow cake to make it extra pure. And so they calcine it, is what it's called. So it's a great big oven that cooks the yellow cake, makes it black, and that just burns off any impurities so that companies that are making it into pellets for uranium power plants have very pure product to work with. So not a lot of extra things in it that they're not interested in. So how hot do you think you need to have an oven to cook it? You bake your turkey at what, 350? This oven cooks the yellow cake at 850 degrees Celsius.
Celsius, what? Oh.
Celsius.
350.
Okay, 350 is Fahrenheit. Yeah. I know. Old school and new school, Canadian and American going together there. All right.
So way hotter than you cook your turkey.
That's right.
Really, really hot.
Your turkey would look like that.
Yeah.
Any,
It looked like I cooked it.
Yeah.
And so Rabbit Lake produces yellow cake as well, but their product is still yellow because they just dry it. They don't calcine it like Key Lake does. I'm going to hand this over to you because I don't know where it's at.
yeah, but you need to stand up first because we're all like after lunch and we're tired and let's stand up.
Should we tell her she's snoring?
Come on, Monica.
Do another stretch.
What's this time? Oh, is it toes? All right, toes.
I can't touch my toes. Let's get this set up.
Maybe a little twist. Oh, lunges.
Sorry, keep stretching.
We have to keep stretching until the video comes on.
Because I need to change my screen because I can't see anything. Just wait, I gotta end this show for a second.
So how long's the drive over here? It's a good drive. Yeah. We came up from Saskatoon today. It's about 4 hours. Yeah. Did you have snow when you left?
No, but
No.
we hit it.
Yeah, same thing. We hit it. Yeah, we hit it about 50 kilometers south of here, and it's still snowing. Are you here for the night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe tomorrow at lunch, I guess. We've got some activities in Washington.
Excellent. Yeah.
You could do this.
Yeah, you did. I did a few of them.
This is gonna show you a few jobs and things at MacArthur River. Can you see that?
Northern Saskatchewan is a pristine and untamed land. Thousands of kilometers of wilderness, abundant in plant and animal life, clear water, and ever-changing skies. A land rich in beauty. There is wealth deep below the surface as well. Gold, rare earth elements, and in the Athabasca Basin, the world's largest deposits of uranium. It's hard to believe, but over 1.6 billion years ago, northern Saskatchewan was a vastly different place. Mountainous terrain towered over fast-moving streams. Groundwaters were rich in minerals, including uranium. Over time, the mountains eroded as conditions changed and groundwaters could no longer contain the uranium as a solution. It was left behind to begin forming the deposits being mined today. The world's largest high-grade uranium deposit is at Cameco's McArthur River mine. We are going to take you on a tour of the McArthur River operation. We will find out how the ore is mined, talk about the technology, and meet some of the people involved. Let's start with the mining process. A head frame rests over the pollock shaft, which provides access to the underground mine. The pollock shaft has been sunk 684 meters below the surface. The ore zone is located between the 530 meter and 640 meter levels. Safety is of foremost importance at McArthur River. The environment, both above and below ground, is carefully controlled and monitored, and everyone that goes underground must wear the proper gear and equipment to ensure their safety.
Hello, my name is Bill Barty. I'm a safety officer here at McArthur River. And part of my job is to instruct personnel coming underground and some of the use of the safety apparatus that we have here. So you have your light, your radio, your belt, your boots, your coveralls. Maybe you should have some gloves. Some safety glasses. I noticed, Cliff, you wear normal glasses, so we'll just have you wear these goggles over your safety or your normal glasses and your gloves.
Mine technicians like Wendy Thomas ensure the shaft is properly ventilated.
My job title is a junior mine tech, and I work with ventilation under mine engineering department here at McArthur. Being as it is an underground mine, it needs a certain amount of air to go into the mine through all the headings, the working headings. And we measure the airflow. We do that every week when we come in. There's a cross shift that does the same thing. And then we have to monitor the airflow, the air supply that we get into the mine.
A radiation lab keeps a close watch on everyone and everything that goes down into the ore zone.
My name is Abby Burden, and I'm a senior radiation technician at McArthur River. So our job is to go underground every day to all the work sites where everybody's going to be working and sample the air and look for any upset conditions and just make sure that everybody's working safely and that they're not getting exposed to any high levels of radiation. This is our radiation lab. This is where we enter all our data from all like the readings that we get underground. Another thing that we do a lot of is scanning. So if people bring equipment up to site, then we scan it so that can go off site. Nothing leaves site unless it's scanned.
And safety is not limited to what goes on underground. The environment in the surrounding area is monitored to ensure compliance with government regulations.
My name is Mark Lebansky, and I'm an environment officer here at McArthur River. My job entails being in charge of the monitoring and measuring program from McArthur River. So we have a number of samples that have to be collected. We have to make sure they're collected on time, on schedule with what our regulators are on, such as Sask Environment Canada. We have to make sure we're in compliance with them. We also have to make sure that the right parameters are sampled for. And then once we get our results back, we analyze it and try to look for trends in case there might be some possible environmental issues, some possible effects, and then do investigate where we do see some issues like that.
To get down to the mining levels, miners and technicians must ride the main elevator.
I'm Drayton Taylor. I'm the shaft foreman at McArthur River here. We're at the number one shaft at McArthur River. We actually have 3 shafts here. Shaft 1 is where all our people go in and out of the mine. Anything with material or equipment, we also take down this shaft. If you go underground, you will see lots of mobile equipment down there. You'll see scoops, loaders, different things like that. Anything that goes in our mine actually goes through this shaft. Those bigger pieces of equipment, a lot of times we have to break them down to make sure they fit. Sometimes they're overweight, we have to break them down to get our weight down to what we can safely move. All the communication to make our conveyances move is done through bell signals. Our deckman's out on the floor, he will ring the bell, and that tells the hoistman what he wants to do. We rely on bell signals because bell signals are basically a universal language. Once you learn it, you know what's going on. So there's no confusion as to what he meant or where he wants to go.
The raise bore method of underground mining is used at McArthur River. A raise bore machine is used to drill a pilot hole down through the ore zone to the tunnel below. At the lower tunnel, a large reaming head is attached.
This is a 10-foot diameter sandvik reamer here. What we do here is we punch the hole through the back with the raise bore. Those are 12¼ rods. Get those down and thread the tricone bit that's at the bottom of the pilot bit, and then we'll thread the unit onto it, pull it back up to the back, and then the crushing action of that drill what starts to crack the rock, and then the rotating action just grinds off the material. That material falls down through these openings in the reamer, and that's where we start extracting our waste, and then it gets onto our ore.
The ore falls onto the floor of the extraction chamber. Periodically, a remote-controlled scoop tram is moved into the chamber. The operator of the tram never has to enter the chamber and is not exposed to any radiation coming from the ore. He is able to scoop up the uranium ore, back the tram out of the chamber, and then transport it to the underground processing circuit. The grinding mill reduces the ore to the consistency of fine sand. This is the first time a grinding mill has been operated underground. Mining processes are overseen in control rooms underground by supervisors and operators. A lot of work is done by remote control to ensure safety.
I'm Steve Fiddler. I'm McArthur River Process Acting Supervisor. We're 640 meters underground in the grinding circuit control room. And we have two operators down here. One is operating the grinding circuit from the control room. We run everything from the control room to keep down our radiation exposures.
The ore is thickened into a slurry or mud in two circular tanks called thickeners. High-pressure pumps push the slurry to the surface. The slurry is temporarily placed in storage tanks. Trucks with specially designed containers are used to transport the slurry. The trucks drive under the filling platform and are loaded with slurry.
What we have here is the front loading in automatic mode. The operator is keeping an eye on the loading sequence from the control room. Right now, codes 1 and 3 are done filling. Now what's going to happen is the platform is going to move over to allow the wash pipe to go down into the tote. But that just washes that excess slurry off the top of the tote and gets rid of contamination.
When the containers are loaded, the truck heads for Key Lake, 80 kilometers away. A career with Cameco at MacArthur River is rewarding, offering
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. Because, now we're gonna talk more about environmental stuff. So really, that's all that's happening up north. There's a mine, they take uranium out, they ship it off to Key Lake to process it, that goes down out to Ontario to produce electricity. Question?
How much nuclear waste is in Canada right now?
I don't know the answer to that. Do you, Ken?
There we go.
Do you know how much nuclear waste is in Canada right now?
How much is in Canada right now? I don't. But I do know that it's stored in only several locations. So our sites here, what's produced at our sites, we store at our sites in contained facilities. So we have what's called above ground tailings management facilities or contaminated waste facilities. And so those are line facilities that things can go into. So when you're working with ore, you're working in the lab, your hands might get chemicals on them, or you might have some things with ore on it where they've got a bit of radiation contamination. They're stored in there, and so those are managed on our sites. And then the nuclear waste from the power facilities are stored on or near their locations. So I know there's talk, you've probably heard it, about creating a new nuclear waste underground facility in Canada. And so Canada's actually kind of great for it because our bedrock's very solid, but I don't know exactly how much it is, but we can find out that information, and definitely if you do a Google search, you'll probably find the answer. Yeah.
So sorry, you don't have the answer for me.
Yeah.
So all of that happens, and then when our jobs come in is to make sure the environment's protected. So just at our sites, on an annual basis, we take over 35,000 samples of water, air, berries, fish, to make sure that the environment is safe. So we're going to do a few science experiments sort of to walk through some of the stuff that we do. So you guys have probably heard of the food chain. So where's our little stuff? Oh. You guys are gonna hate me after this. Who wants to be a moose? Who wants to be lichen on the trees?
You look like some berries, some sediment. Oh, how about the paper? Would you like to be the air? Cranberries? Perfect. Miss anyone?
Okay, let's start with berries. How do berries connect to something else in this room? Somebody likes to eat it, or the berries like to use it? What eats berries, or what do berries need to grow?
Probably some of this.
Probably some of that. Water.
Berries need water to grow.
What connects to water? What else have we got out there? Fish likes to eat another little fish? I bet you that fish would eat that fish.
Yeah.
Cute.
What do fish eat?
What's back there?
The little bugs and insects that live in the water, you bet.
Watch.
Okay, what else have we got? What have you
Oh,
got?
let's see, where do the insects live in the bottom of the lake? What do you find at the bottom of the lake?
Or mud.
Yeah.
What else have we got? I think we're gonna have to go back to water, right? And then,
Oh, see, you combine mud and water, that grows plants. What likes to eat the plants around the water? Yeah.
those are plants. And the moose likes to eat the lichen. And the moose eats air, except we can't reach
Moose likes to breathe.
it. Yeah. So lift your hands up in the air without choking anybody around you.
Oh, sorry.
So we're all connected, right?
So if somebody gives a little tug, everybody kind of feels what that little tug is, right? Yeah. Everything affects everything else.
Okay, you put your arms down now.
All right,
So-
everybody wants to.
So really that's showing that the food chain is always existing and that we don't always, so we do a whole bunch of samples every year. We don't have to test every single thing out there to get a sense of what the environment looks like. We can actually test, the lichen on the trees to see what's in the lichen, put it through the lab, get a whole bunch of results back, and then we can actually tell how the moose are impacted, or if the moose are healthy. We can actually test the berries and see what's in the berries or the berry stems. And we can see how the animals eat the berries, how they're impacted. So that's why we do sampling across a few different areas, and we can test the health of the ecosystem in that area. So here's just a few pictures of people out sampling berries. And this is actually up in probably the Athabasca area, quite far north, where they're sampling fish and berries. Sometimes I just say yes and I don't know what I've done. Oh, I think I want to say no to that one. Oh, goodness. What does that mean?
Yeah, it just eats me in the head with a fish.
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay. So now that we have a big part of the job for our sites, and a big part of what environmental scientists do is sample water, because water is very important for the life of a lot of different species. And so what happens at the mine site is we actually, a lot of water is used underground, and water comes up from underground. And we have to treat it before we release it to the environment, because we want to make sure that the environmental quality of the water matches the surroundings, right? So we're going to do a little experiment and show how you can take some water and how you add different things to it to change it. So actually, maybe just get you guys to do theirs. Don't drink that.
Yeah, rule number one.
It won't kill you, but it definitely won't taste good. Soda and water. And we're going to use these to kind of, you're good to go, indicate some of the chemicals and the chemical reactions that we use on site to treat our water to make sure that it's safe to release. So has anybody heard of pH? Anybody in your science classes heard about acidity and pH of water? So that's what we're going to be testing here today. Yeah. So does anybody know what the pH of water is? Normal drinking water? You betcha.
Okay, to put your put the little end in just the clear water and see what.
Do you want to demonstrate?
Oh yeah. And then look at your sheet and try to figure out.
Yep. And so you can put it up and compare the color.
So the green part, you have to figure out which green it matches.
Compare it to your pH numbers there. Yep.
Which one does it match closest to on your paper? Hey, you guys, we forgot our safety. Science, the most important part. Those of you who have glasses, you're already safe.
Is it like a plastic thing
All right, you've got glasses, you don't need them, but you can definitely give you some to take home.
Okay, so can you see yourself? Yeah. Or you're not that one. Or you're not that one. What color, which one does it match? On your sheet?
Girls are saying 6.
5 and 6. 5 and 6. Well, if you look, 5, pH 5 is the same as human urine. And 6 is a little closer to, we're hoping it's a bit closer to safe.
Feel safe over there, Blair?
I'm okay.
You're good?
Unless you would like me, I'll gladly put him on.
Okay, so we've got about around like between a 5 and a 6, so we're hoping it's closer to 6 than 5. Okay, so the groups on this side, you add the yellow colored stuff to your water.
Don't you remember?
You guys add the powder, oh, you need stir sticks.
Yep.
You guys add the powdered stuff to your water, which is baking soda. I'm gonna add baking soda.
What should we add?
You guys add the baking soda.
The lower
It's opposite,
the more
throw the
acidic
white
it is.
powder in there, give her a stir.
Whole thing?
Yep.
No, you didn't.
You guys add the
lemon
baking
juice.
soda too.
Yeah, you've got it already. Perfect.
And then you gotta just, especially if you have the baking soda, you gotta stir it with the stir stick that Ann has. We need one over here, Ann. Okay. Oh, I need one.
Yeah.
You put in that baking soda, the white. And then once you've got it stirred in, take your other one and test it again.
You remember
Little
baking
testing
soda
strip,
is
give it a
acidic
dip
or
in.
basic, Monica?
Mhm.
Do you remember?
Do you guys
We've already
remember?
looked at it. I was gonna say, do you remember if it's basic or acidic?
Baking soda. What color did yours turn when the baking soda? So match it up.
What do you have now?
What's yours supposed to be?
Yep. We got an 8 or a 9 over here with the baking soda.
And so when the numbers get higher, do you remember what that means? On pH? Basic, right. So the higher the numbers get, the more basic it is, the lower it gets, the more acidic it is, right?
I didn't think.
And you guys, what color did yours come out? Quite orange? Okay, so if you're thinking of like how we treat water, or if we want to treat it to be matching more of the water in the lakes, more closer back to that 6 or 7 or area, what do we have to do now to get it back to the more neutral level? If yours has a high pH, which is basic, we have to add what to it to get it to come back down the scale? Acidic. So we have to add acid to it to bring it back down. And then you guys who have very acidic or low numbers need to add basic stuff to get it back to middle, right? And so this is very similar to what we do when we treat water at a lot of different, at the mine sites in a lot of different areas, even in your water treatment plants in your towns. So go ahead and add the other one.
So now you're gonna add your baking soda.
Whoa! Danger, danger. It is a chemical reaction. If you ever want to make a volcano at home, those are the 2 ingredients that work excellent for that.
Did you guys know?
I feel like you could have predicted that,
Take a
no?
taste. Perfect, perfect. Yeah.
That's what it is.
I had higher expectations, obviously.
And then you can test it again.
So what do you think it will measure now?
Well, mine's about like a 6.
Yeah.
Which one now? 6?
Did it get it kind of back to where you started?
Same color?
So everybody kind of back in that range that your first one was? Balance out the acidic with the basic and the basic and the acidic to get the water in that right spot so that we can release into the environment and all the little bugs and fish and people downstream are happy. Yeah.
So I mean, that's the basic idea of treating water to make it match the natural environment or whatever it is you want it to match. So adding things to it to either take metals out of it, adding things to it to make the pH balance a bit more. So it's really people experimentally, I mean, it's very much of science, and not saying it's very easy to do, but over time people have looked at water, treated water, experimented with it to find out how to get it to change the chemical properties of it, you know?
Yeah. So if you have a lot of lead in your water, maybe you need it to go here, and then the lead will fall out.
If I asked like someone who actually did that job, they would say that I'm highly making it easier than it sounds, but I can take that. Do you want to take that away from you? Or do you want to explain it? Just don't drink it. Actually, we've been in classes where kids have gone and drank it, and then they're just like, it won't hurt you, but I mean, it just tastes disgusting.
Yeah. See, everyone takes it as a dare.
All those chemical engineers, they march to the beat of their own drum.
That's true. Do you want me to take that away, or do you want me to play it?
You want to keep it?
Yeah.
I was like, you can take it. Next to it.
You want to keep it, or?
There's other plastic.
It's, yeah. You can stick your.
Especially because lemon juice is, I think it actually is bad over.
Yeah, we keep this in our kits, so, yeah.
I've had that one before.
Touch your tongue to it maybe if you really, really need to, but, yeah.
Okay, we have one more activity before we send you off for your break, okay? And we'll just do this in pairs again, because it's, now you play with these things. We said this word before, I believe.
We sure did.
And it's on your sheet, what these are called. Yeah. Benthic. So benthic means that they're found, where do you think those are found?
Get you playing over there in there.
In the water. Because
These are just fake, yeah. Not real bugs.
things
The
like
shells
this
are
like
real
to
bugs.
actually eat these guys.
That's what I was
Okay? Fish like to eat these things. And they're found in the like mud bugs under the water.
So, we've got a little chart here to help you try and identify what you have in your tray here today. All the different types of bugs that might be found in your tray. So, you know, they might not look exact because we're playing with little plastic bunnies, but they're pretty close.
So what you want to do is separate them into different the species that they are and count them up. So figure out using that sheet which type they are and then how many of each kind you have.
Yeah. So group them all together. Your paper is double-sided, so if you don't see something on the front, flip it over. Yep. For sure. You guys are pretty close. So we fooled you on this one. These ones are found on the other side of the page. Have a look at that.
So count those ones first, maybe.
Yeah. Pretty close. Your sheet's double-sided. So we've got some other stuff on the other side. Why aren't they real? Because, you know, they wouldn't be happy if we took them out of the ground.
They grind through a lot.
Yeah. And they'd start to smell. Yeah, so a variety of everything. So put them into groups. And so your first sheet that you did the pH chart on has a list. Yep, exactly like they're going. Can I show? Oh, I'm sorry. So look at the names on your one sheet and match them up to this one. And you can write the numbers of each of them on here. So if you have, 10 chironomids, you can put them, the bloodworms, you can put that number there. Yeah.
These ones,
There you go. How you guys doing? Oh, you don't have another sheet set.
May I borrow your aqua sign data or so that our extra group can write on that?
This one. Sorry. I didn't give you your own shot. I'll get you a pen.
oh, so there's one of them. Yeah, so which ones do we think of that? Oh, these ones must be. Maybe the aquatic one, but I think
There we go.
others are more like the aquatic.
It looks like you got them all sorted. Perfect.
How many aquatic worms do we have? 3 of them.
Tasty.
Good.
How's everybody doing?
These ones. I'm thinking these guys are more like this.
Okay, so this little guy just looks a little sad because he's the same as these ones. He's just had a few appendages pulled off. How are you doing? Finding all your critters?
Yeah.
Excellent.
That's actually their house. The flies, or the cat's flies this, but they make their house and they crawl inside.
Yeah, yeah, so some of them have seen better days, so he's the same as these guys here. He's just lost a few legs and a tail, yeah. Yeah. So these ones here are the caddis flies, so it's meant to be kind of their house. Whereas these guys with the 2 little forks here, it's not perfect, but pretty close, yeah. You've got your total? Is everybody totaled up their numbers? Once you know how many is in each, total up your numbers at the bottom there, what you have all together. They're meant to be the Procoptera. Oh, yeah, yeah. So these ones are meant to be the caddis case. It's a little tricky. Yeah. If you ever find something at a fishing store or something, let us know. Yeah. So yeah, these are the stones. Yeah.
How much is the range?
Okay, is everybody done? Okay, let's go. How many different types of bugs did you have? How many different types? Not the total amount, but different kinds of bugs.
We had 5, so there's 2 categories we didn't have any.
Oh, 2 categories, so 5. And how many did you ladies have here? Different types.
6.
You bet. How many different types did you guys have? 6. And are you guys still at the back going?
We had 6.
6. And then what was your total amount? What was the total amount of bugs you guys had? 22. 22? How many do you guys have? pressure's on.
No points taken away if you use your fingers and toes.
Do you guys have a total? How many you had a total in the bath? Do you guys have 22? 23?
23, 22, 26.
26? 21. So when we're looking at like the health of an ecosystem, if we're looking at the health of the fish in the water, we look at how many types of different bugs there are and what's the total number of bugs that they are. So if you go to like a buffet, do you prefer to have a lot more choices of options of things you want to eat, or do you like having just one choice? Like Brussels sprouts? Or do you like a whole bunch of options, right?
I'm with you.
So it's the same with, fish and animals and stuff. They like to have a lot of food to eat and some different options to eat too. That kind of tells us the health, and that's why we look at what different kinds there are and how many there are. Okay? So this is just, oh yeah, I love this picture. What is this silly thing keep doing? Okay, guys, look at this picture. Like somebody did this slide for us, or like somebody in the Cameco put the slide up, and then I took it to like a classroom. We're talking about like ecosystems in Canada, and look at the slide.
Anything standing out as not typical of Canadian?
There's a kangaroo.
Like really?
Like lobsters. Yeah.
Like I think somebody just was like, oh, here's a nice picture, we'll put it on the slide. And I was like, well, this is in Canada? Kangaroos on here. But I guess what, the same things apply. Like the health of an ecosystem.
There's like squeaking.
So that is the end of our formal discussion. So from you guys, I guess we talked about careers. We talked about what else were we going to chat about?
Any questions? Anything we touched on that you want a bit more information on, or have any questions about? Yeah. So if anybody is curious, the Canadian Nuclear Association creates these little fact books, so we should have enough for everybody. So it gives you some of the basic information. So how many reactors we have, some research, the effects of radiation on the body and what you would get normally just walking around versus maybe working in a mine or things like that. So I know I had a lot of questions before I started working at Cameco. I was a little worried. I didn't know what a uranium mine would be, or whether I would be exposed to dangerous radiation or anything like that. And so I had a lot of questions when I first started there. And it was really great to be able to sit and talk to people and say, we're going to monitor you all the time. So we all carry, while we're on site, dosimeter badges, so it measures the dose of radiation we get at any given time. We sample the air around, so sometimes we carry dust pumps, which samples the air around to see what we're breathing in. And we have annual physicals, so every year we get to go to the doctor, get our blood taken, they check our hearing, because of course underground and mine sites, any industrial site can be loud as well, right? So a lot of those things, but I had a lot of questions. I know my parents had a lot of questions when I first started working at site. They were a little worried about me. So I started doing some research into uranium, nuclear, for my own purposes. Did you get this? And find out a bit more information. So that I could feel comfortable working at site and that I could answer the questions of my friends and families. Because people would ask me, is it safe to work in a uranium mine? Is it safe to work in a uranium mill? And when I first started there, I didn't know the answer to that question. And so I asked a lot of questions to people working up there, and I did a lot of research, and I found out, yeah, they have a lot of controls in place, a lot of safety programs in place, and I felt very comfortable working where I was working and being able to answer some questions. So,
We've got a question over here.
Yes?
You said your company is very heavily regulated.
Yeah.
Did it start out that way?
So way back in the day, no, definitely not, right? So just like seatbelts didn't used to have, be in cars, you know, cars were built without seatbelts and nobody had life jackets
So what
and
did
things
your
like
company
that.
do with
Yeah.
nuclear waste back then?
So Cameco wasn't formed way back then. Do you remember the year that Cameco was formed? I don't, but anyways, Cameco wasn't a company. Yeah.
1990,
Yeah.
99.
Yeah, so a lot of the uranium mines from the 40s and 50s, especially in northern Saskatchewan, they're under decommissioning processes today. So everybody mines up in the Northwest Territories and things. Nobody really knew about waste management and things. You went in, you grabbed the ore, you left it behind. So what we're doing now is the federal government or the provincial government or various companies have taken ownership of these sites and they are in a process of reclamation and decommissioning. So up north, we have things like the Gunner site, the Beaver Lodge site. They're taking these old uranium mines and mills and ensuring the shafts are covered safely, that the tailings are covered, that any lakes that were impacted have the tailings covered, removed, or they're testing the water, everything like that to see what's going on. So there's a lot of money going into fixing up those historic sites because there wasn't those regulations in place. And so much like we learned that driving around in a car is dangerous without seatbelts, we learned that you shouldn't just let anybody build a mine without having some control of that. So we now go in and when we're exploring, we apply for permits, people know where we're going to be, what we're going to do. We do a lot of environmental assessments and work before we're allowed to build an operation, and same thing while we're working, yeah.
So what are you doing about the old waste that was being properly stored?
So a lot of companies are working on it, so SRC, Saskatchewan Research Council, is doing the remediation process of some of those mines. So in some cases, they're being buried back in the mine shafts. Now, this isn't my company working with that one, but we do have control of the Beaver Lodge operation. So it's not a Cameco site, but Cameco's managing the decommissioning process.
So I was gonna say,
Yeah.
I guess what's too bad about that is that it's now, like the provincial, federal government is paying for cleaning up, and it's obviously more expensive now to go back and try and redo it all than it is to if we were to shut down a mine and clean it up, we actually have the money sort of sitting in a bank account that can be used to clean it up, and the company's responsible to do that. Where these old ones, they weren't responsible, they actually just walked away.
Yeah.
And then the province and the Canada government is left to clean it up, so it's quite the expense. So that's the difference that's changed. Now the province and the federal government makes the company be responsible to clean up anything that they've done. So that's a big change from just in this last 100 years or 50 years even. So yeah, anything else? Anything else? Maybe you'll think of something else. Anybody have any questions about like environmental science jobs or anything in the like environmental stuff? You know, I really like my career path. Like like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I liked getting into environmental science. I know I like science a little bit, but I liked the path I took. And what I think is interesting for the students that are here, you guys tend to have a little bit more knowledge of the outdoors than the city kids. Like Sask kids that grew up in Saskatoon that have never seen a wild, some people have never seen a moose. Like my husband was telling me that he was traveling, he went to school in the United States for a little while, and they were driving with a guy from New York. They were driving out of New York, and the guy who was riding was points out the window, and he's like, "Oh my God, look at that! It was a cow." The guy who lived in the city had never seen a cow, and yeah. So and there's people in Saskatoon that have grown up in Saskatoon. They've never seen a deer, they've never seen a moose, they've never been fishing, And so when I would go to school, they actually did a class. I would say I was in the outdoors a bit more than like, a city kid. Like I am, but maybe not as much as you guys. So I knew I'd seen fish, but when I went to university, I took an entire class of just identification of birds, fish, like mammals, so deer, and that was my entire class, was to memorize every name of every species in Alberta, you know? So when you look at like,
Bringing back anxiety.
but when you look at some of like the kids that grow up in nature, you guys are like a step above a lot of those kids already, by knowing what fish species you're catching, by knowing what mammals out there, you know? So you get in a classroom with those kids and you'd be like, you don't know what a
Of course, not
catfish
a walleye, and not a there's trout. Yeah.
So you guys have I don't want to say that everybody does, but there is a natural knowledge that you have in this area, from where you grew up and being outside.
So have all the old companies we bought already?
The old companies, the ones that had the old mines, yeah, they don't exist anymore. So actually, the government took responsibility of those sites, and the government is actually paid for companies like Saskatchewan Research Council, pays them to go clean up the sites.
It's just Cameco and Reaper that are operating right now.
Operating, and there's a lot of minor companies that are out doing exploration, but the only real two companies that are actually mining uranium and Cameco and uranium, now they call them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Arena switched, it's around. Yeah.
Just to make it more confusing.
Yeah.
So anything else? I really appreciate you guys doing some of these experiments with us. I know sometimes sitting through presentations is like a little boring, but. And if you do have any questions about jobs or questions about environmental science and you don't want to ask your teachers, they can always get in contact with us at Cameco too if any questions.
How many people do you employ?
What are we at right now? At one point, we were at 4,000, and then we've had to lay off a few people lately, and so we're probably closer to just over 3,000. I'm not listening to you guys directions. You're dear, you're like good
Are you
on
nervous? Are they drowning in your water?
Earlier, it's just because I'm not doing it again.
Yeah, could you put on your tongue?
Yeah, I did it earlier. She wants me to do it again. Angel. It's gross.
Okay, thank you very much, you guys, for